Salamanders. Yes, whoop whoop. It's Thursday of week 1 in phase 2, and we're going to start talking about user authentication in a Sinatra application today. However, I also am going to cover quickly hiding API keys because that's the thing several of you talked about that you wanted to know about before you started moving into your passion projects. And it seems like an important thing. Why does it seem like an important thing? Anybody? You don't have to raise your hand, buddy. You can just
So that nobody uses your API and does a bunch of requests or something, use it on your website.
Yeah, that's essentially it. Let me maybe distill it into a slightly more reasonable use case. Oh, I got an email from me. Okay, thanks, me. Let's say let's say you've got a Giphy API key, right? Like you don't really care if 36,000 people get your Giphy API key and now they're spamming the internet with your Giphy API key. You're like, whatever, no big deal. But let's say, for instance, that you have a Venmo API key. And your Venmo API key gives you the ability to send and receive money on behalf of your website and your website's users. And you accidentally publish your Venmo API key up to GitHub, and you wake up the next morning to find that you were $36 million in debt.
Oh my god. I don't want to do it.
That's probably an imaginary use case. Let me give you one that's not imaginary. Let's say you have an AWS API key and that you accidentally publish your AWS API key up to GitHub. And some malicious intent person somewhere in the world scrapes over GitHub every 15 minutes for API keys, which is a thing that happens. And they take your AWS key and then they deploy it up to 37 porn servers in Finland. You're paying for those 37 servers, and they'll be up and running for a month before you get your billing statement from AWS to let you know that you're $4,000 in the hole to AWS. Now you're having a conversation with AWS about well, but no, I don't run 37 porn servers in Finland. I promise. I barely know the difference between get and put. So that actually happened here at Dev Bootcamp with the Final Project team, the last example. And they were able to get the $4,000 bill annulled, thankfully, because we have a very nice relationship with AWS, but that will not always be the case. So the moral of the story is this. API keys are private. They're called generally when you find them on the internet, right? They're labeled as secret key, right? And they're not called that for shits and giggles, right? It's supposed to be actually secret. So let's talk quickly about how we keep these things secret in the land of Git, where we're supposed to commit everything up. So we're going to come to this passion fruity project because why not? And we're going to check out a new branch right away, which will be hide your keys. Okay, great. And let's open. And your wife, yes. We're going to come to. So there's lots of ways to hide your keys. There's lots of different programs and gems that will take care of this functionality for you. I personally like bcrypt, mostly because that's the thing that someone showed me once upon a time, a long time ago. I was like, hey, that's really cool, and that's what I've used ever since. And it works. It's never not worked, so that's what I use. So if we come to the internet and we type in bcrypt, no, I said bcrypt. I didn't mean bcrypt at all. I meant .env. God, I'm sorry, people. Maybe we shouldn't record things until after I've had my first cup of coffee, completely. .env. .env is a gem which will help you to hide your keys, right? So we come here, and this gem's fairly well documented. It's got some stuff at the top about how to install it in Rails, or how to install it in Sinatra or plain old Ruby. I wonder which one of these will apply to us. How to use the .env gem, right? So you can read through that and reference it accordingly as you need. I'm just going to go ahead and like plow through and like show you that it's a functional thing, and like, you can figure out the rest of it on your own down the road. Okay, cool. So I'll need a gem dot env. And this can go into test and development. We won't need it in production because in production we will like send our keys to the production server independently.
I'm sorry, can you break that down? What does that mean?
So we have keys, right? And we're going to like be hiding them here in our local development environment so that we can work on our machines. The keys that we use on our actual production website, right? Are we aware that like your application comes in 3 different environments: test, development, and production?
Yes.
Test is when you're running your specs. Development is when you're typing the things. Production is when the user is clicking the button, right? Okay. The production environment will set the keys manually there. So there's not a need to hide them because like we'll be directly sending them to the server and then they're just hidden on the server, which I'll show you how to do when we get there. So I added the gem.env. Go ahead and bundle. We'll also need to require and load this gem as is stipulated in the documentation, right? Require.env.env.load. So we'll come to our environment RB. It just needs to happen somewhere in the bootstrap process or the boot up process of your application. Environment RB is a good place to do that, clearly. Someone else thought it was a good place to require a bunch of stuff. So we'll go ahead and handle that here. The other thing that you need to do is to create a file in the root of your application here called .env, aptly named. So there's our .env file, and then within this, it's just a key value store, right? Like it's just a big hash. So it'd be like secret thing equals yay, you don't know me. Ah, okay, great. And you know, other secret equals convention with .env keys is and when I say keys, right, I mean like the key and the key value pair is all caps underscore separated. Okay, cool. And no spaces. Yeah, that's how we'll see it like listed out in their documentation. Okay, great. So let's come back over here, and this app is very bare bones. So let's go ahead and make an index controller, index.rb.
Oh.
I'm on your bed rest for a couple. What? Okay. Yeah. All right. This is my uncle.
Oh my god.
Okay. And here in index RB, we're gonna make our like initial root route. So get/index do, and then we'll erb to index, which means now that we'll need a view over here in the views file called index. Let's make that index.erb. Sweet. This is gonna have an h1 called index. And let's confirm that that's up and running. B shotgun. Off to the internet we go. Hi ho, hi ho. I got an index. Yay, so that worked out. Great. Now, like to confirm that we have these keys, we can say, like we could print here, we could say E and V, so this is how you consume them, with a string of secret thing. All right, and we'll wrap this in an H3. And there's our secret key. So that's like the process of like implementing the .env gem and consuming the .env gem. You could consume it in the view. You would most likely consume this, however, in like a controller or in a model, right? Something like that. You'd be like, here we go. Check this out. So like here, this is the thing that gets like the mentors for the wall up front, right? And like when I initialize this class, I'm making an @token variable, and it's just reaching out to my env and getting the deputy token, right? So like that's my hidden key, and like now I have it in memory in the application, and I can consume it like appropriately later in life.
And it never gets seen? Like it never gets seen?
Well, maybe, maybe not. We should talk about that. So as of right now, if I did a get status here, well, okay. If I didn't have a global get ignore and I did a get status here, the .env would show. I have a global get ignore at subl tilde dot global maybe. Fuck, I don't know what I did with it. Well, it doesn't matter. The point is this. The .env, like if you do not add it to your .getignore, you have completely defeated the entirety of the purpose of running with the .env, because it will be uploaded to your GitHub when you commit, right? So you like your project comes with, or if it doesn't, you can add a .getignore file. This one does not come with one, so you just touch .getignore. And like right now, like gem files in here, right? Like if I went to the getignore file and I added gem file and then reran my get status.
You had the whole gem file?
Well, I was like trying that because I thought maybe it worked, but I don't think it did. Gemfile.lock maybe? I don't think that's gonna work either. You know, because that's like, what's that?
No, you have to do the get ignore before you commit a change. Because if you commit before your get ignore, then it's going to do it.
Yeah, because it's already seen this file. Yeah, that's the thing.
So why don't we create a new file and put it in the getignore just to test that out?
So I could do like star.wave here, yeah, and then over here I'll like touch Yobama.wave. And now when I get status or get S, right, like my new wave file that I just created like doesn't show up here in my get status. It's not a thing that gets like looking to track.
Nick showed us this one once before. The file that we actually want to add to get ignore is the env file, right?
.env.
That's the only one we need to add.
Yes, that's correct. So you would want to add that to your like local getignore. The policy that I have in place on this system and that I recommend to you for your system is to establish a global getignore with things that you know you'll always want to ignore, like your .env, like .ds store, right? Like things of that nature, like node modules when we get into node in phase 3. Yeah.
Can we do that right now? Can we do a global get ignore?
I have it somewhere. I'm not sure where. I didn't want to take the time to like find it.
Okay. We'll put it back on the board.
Second day breakout.
Yeah,
I mean, you could just like, oh, there it is. Get ignore global. Yeah, here it is. So for me, that's where it's at.
And you just created that?
Yeah. You might like check your local internet documentation to ensure, right? Like, but you'll be able to figure it out pretty easy. So right down here, I've got the .env, right? No trashes, no spotlights, no SQLite 3 databases, no DS stores, and no node modules. These are just things that I know I will never, ever, 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 ever want to commit up to GitHub, right? But they will like be part of my projects. So like by placing them in the global get ignore, I just never have to worry about them. Okay, this concludes the presentation on .env and hiding your keys. This is really what you need to know. There is one other thing to say about it. If you do somehow accidentally upload your keys to GitHub, simply making a new commit after you've removed them does not save your soul, right? Like they are still there. They are actively like up in the cloud on your GitHub. The only way to like be legit from that point forward is to go and regenerate the key at its source, right? Okay, this definitively concludes my talk on .env. Any questions? Yes.
Most APIs, it's pretty easy to regenerate your key.
Super easy. In fact, like it's supposed to be very easy, exactly for that reason, right? Like, oh, something happened. Well, we'll need a new one of these, right? Yeah.
So scripts that go on GitHub to hunt down API keys, that's obviously an illegal activity. Is that not an illegal activity?
I don't know.
Probably not.
I mean, it's public information. How illegal can it be for you to scrape over public information and use it for your benefit? Someone else published it to the web. It's their problem, right? Like I would say it's definitively a very gray area, as it is like using code with malicious intent, but it's using publicly available code with malicious intent. So the whole like word public there like is where it gets very iffy. Hide your keys. Okay. Closing all this out now, let's start talking about user authentication.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I want to make user authentication. Can you talk to me like from a RESTful standpoint about the controllers that I'm going to need? Anybody?
Login, user.
Okay, so a user controller. Yeah, like a fully cruddy RESTful user controller, right? Like we'll need to be able to do all the things with users. Clearly, if we're logging something in and out, right, like that thing is probably a user. Anything else? Session controller, sure. What is that? What?
In the reading from last night, it says it tracks your sessions for every user.
It does say that in the reading from last night.
State.
Aha! So, who got through all the reading from last night? Yeah, okay. Well, not going to twist your arm about it. It's your experience, I suppose. Session controller. So Session is another RESTful resource for us. Session is the thing which we will be creating and consuming in order to persist state around our website. It will not, however, be a fully RESTful controller because we won't be using all 7 of the routes. I mentioned this to you briefly yesterday. For the user controller, we're going to have 7 RESTful routes. For the session controller, we're just going to have 3, which will be new, create, and destroy. So that's because like this is what we need here. We don't require the other things because like you're never going to edit someone that are like so. So in this case, new would be like the act of getting the form to log someone in, right? So I need a form to create a new session. So that'd be like username and password form. Clear? Great. Create would be the post route, a post to sessions, which is the act of like taking the information from that form and actually creating the session object, right? And destroy would be like whatever you're reaching into the server, you're hitting some route that says, hey, log this person out, destroy that session. We never need to go back and like edit the session. It's like a Boolean return, right? Like they're either logged in or they're not. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. So let's get started with these controllers here. We'll make a users underscore controller. I really would prefer if you named your controllers in this fashion. I think I harped to some of you about it, but I'm harping to all of you about it now. The resource pluralized underscore controller would make me a happier camper. Okay. Oh God, no, that's not what I want. I want new file, ns sessions underscore controller .rb. So the user controller, do you remember yesterday I was showing you about the categories thing and I was talking about how you know I could like write the whole thing and it's no big deal because I was just following some pattern. Do you remember that conversation? Okay, great. So, here's that pattern that I wrote out yesterday. This is just like the basic RESTful controller pattern, yeah? If I want to convert this over to a user's controller, you know what I mean? Get users, user is, so it doesn't match the snake case or the caps, which is unfortunate. Yeah, considerably. So because like I knew I was following this pattern, right? Like how long did it take? Like let's say that I was building out some application that had like 17 different RESTful resources, right? How long does it take me, like after I've built the first one correctly and like following the RESTful pattern, how long does it take me to build like the subsequent 16 controllers? Like 30 seconds a piece or something, right? Like from an efficiency standpoint, this is a huge win. That said, you should like the ability of me to like come in and like be comfortable with that and like know everything's going to work comes from having implemented this like hundreds of times, right? Yeah. So on this thing, there we go. All right, so there's our users controller, and we go to the sessions controller now. We said we needed a get to sessions /new. And we'll say that this ERBs to sessions new. Yeah, good. And we need a post to /sessions. A lot of people get hung up on this point right here, so I just want to talk about it for a second. When we post into a resource, we post directly to it. Post to sessions here, right? It's not post to sessions new, or post to sessions add, or post to sessions like create, or anything like that, right? Like we're just posting to the resource straight up. And the reason that, it may seem like this is more clear, right? Like makes a lot more sense. But the reason that this is very clear is because, like, when we say that we're posting to something, like the new is implied. It's already included, right? Like when we're posting to something, we are creating a new whatever of that resource. All clear, all good? Yeah.
Is it also always common to have an index.rb controller?
Always is such a dangerous term.
Yeah.
It is. You always need to have something in this route. And even that always is very dangerous. You really want something in this route. Maybe it's in the index controller. Maybe you just have it in like whatever your root controller is, right? So like if users were like the central core tenet of my website, maybe this route like exists within users controller. And I don't have like the separate standalone index controller. But like having something that handles what happens when people just show up to www.passionfruity.com, right? Like need to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
I noticed that a lot of the times it's a redirect to / whatever. You could just not do that. When is it conventional to do that and not do that?
You could not do what?
Redirect to let's say users or something.
Yeah. So in this case, we're just when we redirect to users, we're just preempting this root route with a different root route. So like we're essentially like according to the rest of the world, they're going to this page and that's passionfruity.com. But according to us as developers, right, like passionfruity.com, really like the index of it, the homepage, so to speak, lives at the index of users.
So it's for the point of just when you're advertising your website, you don't want to say, oh, this is www.whatever.com/users. You want to say .com.
Well, yeah, here in Sinatra, that's the way you would go about it. When, like, later in life, you'll be able to declare the root of your website with a method. You say, like, the root goes to users index, right? And like that, and that's the homepage.
Okay.
You can go either way here, It's really a design choice, right? Like the redirect to users means that like now the user's index is the home page, right? In this case, we're not redirecting, we're yielding. So this index here is the home page. So we would like design that index to be our home page with like links that go around to the site and like do different things. It's also probably a choice around like how your site is structured. You know, if you're consuming like 17 different RESTful resources and none of them are really the core central tenants, then you probably have an index page that exists outside of those RESTful resources that sort of consumes and pulls different things in, right? If like the entirety of our site was like you've got users and those users can text other users with funny jokes, right? Then it seems like probably users would be the place, right? So we would maybe we just go there directly. You see how it's kind of a design?
Yeah.
Let's get back on track. I probably what do I need to do next? Anybody? I made a controller. I made well, we got this post to sessions here, and then the third one I said I was going to need was a delete, right? According to RESTful conventions, it should be deletes a resource at an ID. That said, that doesn't really make sense for sessions, so it can just be a delete to session straight up. So we just established these routes here, and let's move on. We probably need to create, what's that? I think we're missing a huge step.
We're missing a get for the list of sessions, right? We don't really need that.
We don't need a get for the list of sessions. Sometimes people put in like a get sessions, like debugger or something like that, or sessions info that would like set a variable. Just so that like you could have like some route that you could go and hit that would then display your session
I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm an uncle! Oh my god, oh shit, I totally just broke this cup.
Mazel tov.
Yeah.
Careful.
Sorry.
Uh,
Ow.
yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. Oh,
Ouch.
okay. And all right.
Yeah, I'm gonna go take
Let's-
care of that.
Cannot babysit for a while.
There are band-aids next to the restroom.
Yeah, first day's next to the restroom.
James, will you help him, please? Thanks, buddy.
He needs a band-aid.
He needs to. Yep.
He's an uncle.
He's an uncle.
No.
He's an uncle with a bleeding finger and a broken mug. We'll be telling this story for years. Okay. So like maybe that's a useful thing. I usually like would leave that out. Whatever. Yeah. We need users first off. We don't have that yet. So let's what's that? Let's create a migration.
That's a crucial thing that we didn't even create the model for the users, right?
Yeah, we haven't done a model or a migration for users yet. So we like skipped right over that business. Which is to, you know, when I talk about like the typical workflow, I usually start with migrations, and then I go to models, and then I go to controllers, and then I go to views. We just like preempted that workflow a little bit this morning. That said, like really it all has to come together at some point, so the order is sort of up to you. Before we start talking about that, probably a good time to commit. I want to git add the gem file. I want to git add the gem file.lock. I want to git add environment. Oh, this is config environment. And I want to git add app controllers index and git add app views index. And git commit -m .env demo MVP. Git status again, and now I'm going to, I want to take this thing out of the git ignore. Really? Oh, because the file wasn't there before. I get it. This time I'm just going to get add dot and get commit dash m initial users slash sessions controller build. I do have aliases set up for all of those, but I try really hard not to use them in front of students. Aliases are terrific. You will build your own set as you proceed forth in your life as a developer. Do not, under any circumstances, spend a lot of your time right now thinking about all the super cool aliases that you can set up. It's terrible for you for a multitude of reasons. Number one, you don't yet have a full understanding of what what things do and do not need to become much more efficient in your command line workflow. Number two, you do not at this stage of your career want to become highly dependent upon a set of commands, because you're going to walk into a technical interview and they're going to hand you some clean Mac and you're like, all right, yeah, code it up, and you're over there get cam, get cam, get cam. Oh, why doesn't, oh, what the hell, I don't remember what it is. And now you look like a bumbling idiot that doesn't know how to properly git commit because you've gotten it so ingrained into your workflow that this is how I do things, right? Just my 2 cents. Bacon. Okay. Now let's say this. Let's say b rake generate model name equals user. We don't need a model for the session. Generate migrations. And we don't need a migration for the session either, because it's not something that we're actually storing in the database. This will be create users. Oh no, generate. Oh yeah, I guess you're right, computer. Again. Okay, create users. This is create underscore table users do t and let's say t.string username and t.string email and t.string password underscore hash. Now you probably were thinking just password here. When we go and look at the bcrypt documentation, which we'll do right now, bcrypt, whatever, I don't care if I didn't spell it right. Google figured it out. Totally did. In Biggin. So bcrypt is one of those super special places in the universe where it is actually legitimate for you to just straight up copy paste. Maybe. At least for the user model it is. For the other ones down here, not so much. But for the user model, you can literally just grab what's here and head over to user model and put that right in, and it's all good. What's happening here? What do we just bring in? We're requiring the bcrypt gem. Ordinarily, we'd probably require gems in our environment file. The caveat to that being, if you have a place in your application where a gem is only being consumed in that one place ever, then it's okay to just require it in that one file. We probably do need to have the gem within our gem file, right? So gem bcrypt. And we probably will need a bundle. Yeah, there we go. So same class user inherits from active record base that we have before. We're including into this class the bcrypt methods. And then these are the two methods that bcrypt gives us. Password and password equals, which is essentially the setting and the checking of the password. We won't get into how the nuts and bolts work here. I will tell you this, bcrypt sort of messes with the way that it checks equality, like the way that Ruby would check equality in a standard fashion. If you're interested in more of that, I would encourage you to do the thing that I heard at Morning Stand Up, which is hack the gem. Right? Get in there, open up the lib folder, take a look at the source, figure out where they're changing the things. Right? It'd be fun and exciting. Great. This is what we need to do to the user model in order to have a valid bcrypt thing. Wow, that is a lot of.
Yeah, I think I got glass in there. Ouch. Sorry, excuse me.
Maybe talk to Jenny. Okay. All right. I'm worried about him. He'll be fine. Okay.
Uncle.
Noted. He's an uncle. He'll be fine.
Oh yeah, the doctor's like
If we continue looking at the bcrypt documentation, right, like it talks about what to put in the user model up here. Then it says like creating the account, def create, at user, user new params user, at user.password equals params password, at user.save. You don't have anything in your application called def create. This is more of a Rails convention. But based on the code that you see in here, what route do you think this would be in the controller? I definitely heard it.
Users.
Post to users? It is a post to users. All right, so let's head back over to the users controller. And let's find our post to users. Here it is. Maybe we paste this in down here, and then like let's comment it out. We're just going to use it as reference. So what are they doing? They're making a at user variable, which is user new params user. We're doing that. And then they're doing this thing where they're passing the password and associating it. Right? We're doing that now. And then they're doing this thing where they're saving the user. We're doing that thing where we're saving the user. What's the difference between save and save bang? Save bang blows up. Save doesn't. Save fails silently. Save bang fails loudly. Create versus create bang. Create fails silently, right? Like it just hands you back your user object. If it doesn't work out, it's like, here's this user that you tried to save. It sure looks like a user, but I went ahead and added some areas, like some stuff to this error messages here on the bottom. But if you didn't know to check for that, like it just looks like a regular old object coming back. Whereas create bang, save bang, things of that nature, right? Like yes, this. That's what it's
What do
doing.
you mean it blows up?
I mean, it's like a stop execution error, right? Like, so the website ceases to function. You get an error in the terminal. It says user failed to save because username can't be blank, right? So the program ceases to function. All right, so back to the documentation. Actually, I don't want to go back to the documentation yet. Let's create our database and migrate our database and check our database to see that like we actually have this user object. That seems like a thing that we should have done already. We do. User, it's got an ID, a username, an email, and a password hash. All right, coming back around to the password hash thing. When I made the migration initially, I went ahead and named it password hash. You'll notice from the bcrypt documentation that it like talks about password hash consistently. It says, be sure password hash is in the database as a string. So bcrypt is expecting there to be an attribute on your user model called password hash. And this is the actual value that bcrypt is writing in. So it's giving your user a method called password, so you will be able to like call a plain text thing and be like at user.password. But the thing which is actually going to be stored at the database is this password hash. That doesn't have to be called password hash. You could call it whatever you want, right? Like it could totally be flapjacks or something, right? And you will see it like done differently. The important thing to note here is just like this self dot attribute, this inbound attribute, and this actual attribute on the table, like all three of these things have to match. So whatever you want to call them, that's fine. The convention here is password hash. Everybody clear on that? Go back to, oh, where was I? I was in the user model, right? Yeah. Okay, moving on. Let's talk for a second about session. Session is a persistent data store in your website. It's your first exposure to what you will like come to know as cookies. Yeah. So like if we come back and we take a look at our website, which isn't running, Cookie. Cookie. Let's go to our index controller, right? And so here's session. This is what it looks like. Boom, session. It has keys, as it's just a big hash. It's called a sessions hash, which probably is a solid indicator that it's a hash. So let's say session, monster equals cookies, right? Or so, something like that. Now, so we're setting that here. Let's go out to our index.erb view, and we'll duplicate this line, but inside of here, instead of our environmental variable, now we're going to say we're going to consume session monster. Okay. Oh, really? What did I do? Very bottom, no such file directory, sysopen, users index.erb, I get to users, passion fruity app views users index.erb. Ah, I see. No. Here, index.rb, because now we're redirecting the users instead of erbing this index. So I messed it up because this file doesn't actually exist yet. The thing that would like ultimately culminate coming out of here.
Wait, what would be another example, like a real life example of this monster cookies thing?
Well, hold on. I promise I will show you real life examples in just a moment. I am still in users. There we go. Okay, so cookies. All right. You don't just get sessions for free in your Sinatra application. You have to set it up. The skeleton comes with it already done. If we Command-Shift-F here, Command-Shift-F being your global search, also being your friend, and we say like session, we'll find it, boom, 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 right here. In the environment.rb on line 37, or line 36 rather, enable sessions, and on line 37 it sets the session secret. This is what you have to have like as a baseline in order to enable like this functionality in your website. Once it's done, it's done. Most of your challenges, I don't think you'll encounter a challenge here where you have to enable sessions. I think that it's always going to be turned on for you, but now you know. Okay. Oh my God, so many files, getting rid of all of them. Okay, cool. So like moving on to a real world example of sessions. In our, let's go to our sessions controller. When we post into sessions, we're creating a new session, which is another way of saying that we're logging a user in, right? If we came back to the bcrypt documentation, we've got authenticating a user, def login. I would have asked you like what route this correlates to, but since I just told you, it's kind of pointless. So a post to sessions is the same as like logging in. We're all clear with that? Okay. So what are they doing here? They're finding a user by their email based on inbound params email. And then it's saying like if the user's password matches the inbound params password, what's next? Give token? I don't know what that means. Does anyone know? So in this case, the token that you're giving is the session. So session, and we'll call it session ID equals @user.id. This is the act of logging someone into a website, right here. This is all the magic. Actually, there is no magic, right? But if there were magic, this is what all of it would be. So what? And then else, yeah, redirect, right? So we can get rid of this reference code down here. We'll add our else. Let's say at errors equals username and password not found or something, and then ERB back to sessions new. I'm putting errors into an array here instead of just passing it as a string straight up. I'm putting it into an array because like other places in my application, based on like the thing we were talking about with errors yesterday, right? The errors attribute from active record is going to come back as an array. So I'm going to make it an array here. That way it's like same in all the places. So I don't have to like think about, oh, is it this way here? Is it that way there? Right? Like I just always write it the same way, which will allow me to like make more reusable code. Please, people, yell at me about making a errors partial this after at some point. I don't care if I didn't spell errors right. Okay, cool.
Somebody put it on the board. So,
Sure. Okay, so questions about what I did here in the sessions controller. Who's totally lost? Okay. Who's totally on board? Who's somewhere in the middle? Okay. Let's write some more code in the view to sort of make these things come together so we can actually see them function and test them as we go, as opposed to like you just trusting that I actually know what I'm talking about, which is probably not the case. How about some views? So we'll make a new folder called sessions. And within that sessions folder, within that sessions folder, just one file called new.erb. Within this, I'm gonna put myself in H2. It's gonna be like sessions new. This is just some like debugging for me while I'm structuring out my site. All right, I'll remove it eventually, and then we'll make a form. So the form needs two attributes definitively: action and method, which correspond with the verb and the address for our routes. Right. So action is the address, which is /sessions, and method equals post. Sweet, super sweet, ultra mega sweet. Oh my God, not sweet. Okay, we've got an input type. This one will be text. The name will be username. And I'm going to put a placeholder, which will be username. And we'll duplicate this one down here. The next one, the type will be password. It's important to set your password fields to type password so that it's not displayed in plain text. The name will be password. And the placeholder will also be password. And then a third input, which will be type submit, no name, but a value of login. All right. So here's our form. 2 inputs, 1 text box for a username, 1 text box for a password. Although I think that the way that we wrote this was email, right? I think so. So I'm just going to replace these with email quickly. We can confirm that if we go back to the sessions controller. Yeah, user find by email was the thing that was passed in. You could find the user by whatever you want. You could find them by like their username. You could find them by their email. You could find them by their childhood dog name or something. I don't know. It's up to you. Probably username or password's probably a good way to go. Can I go back to view? Yes. I'm recording this. Okay. All right. So now we got this form. Let's go to our back to our sessions controller. We've got this goes to sessions new. We made the sessions new. So we just need a link from our home page. So let's go back to the home page, index.erb, and let's make ourselves a link to /sessions/new, and we'll call this one login. And let's go see if that works. Back on the home page. Now we've got a button down here, login. We click the button, takes us over to the sessions new page, which has a form for username and password, or email and password. The placeholder attribute, by the way, if you're wondering what it does, this is what it does. it populates the fields with like visible text, but it's not actual text. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Can you reset that form so it doesn't appear?
Reset it. What do you mean?
So the fields go away.
This like the input, the placeholder values.
I guess that's more later than right.
You're talking about resetting the form like after you've Ajaxed it or something. Yeah, there's a reset function in jQuery. You could also like manually iterate over a thing and set its value to an empty string. We'll talk about it next week, I promise. Okay. Yeah, moving on. All right, so email, I'm going to be tom@tom.com, and my password's going to be tomtom. And I'm going to try to log in here, and I'm going to, no method error. Oh my God, undefined method password for nil class. What happened? It all blew up. If @user.password equals params password, and it's saying undefined method dot password for nil class, which is to say that @user is nil, right? Because like there is no user in my database with tom@tom.com because there's no users in my database yet, right? So a good like error check right off the bat here would be like if @user and user.password. And so like does this object even exist? Is it a thing at all? If not, then like move along. Yeah. Okay, cool. So like clearly we need to be able to make a user. Let's go back to our views and let's make a new folder. Oh my God. Called users. And within users, let's make a new file, new.erb. Let's go to our users controller. Users new corresponds with users new.erb, right? Okay, great. So users new, here we are. So for users new, I'm going to need another form. You know what? Just to save time, I'm going to go back to the sessions new, and I'm going to copy this form and just make the changes as needed. So it's a new user, so it'll be a post to users. Type text email, type text username, and type text password. And how about type text password confirmation? Confirmation. Okay, and then let's also add to our index one to go to users new, a link to users new, which will be called register. Okay. Refresh. Now we have a register link. When we hit the register link, it takes us to the user's new route with our form. So email is going to be tom@tom.com. Username is going to be tomtom. Password is going to be tomtom. Password confirmation is going to be tomtom. Before I hit login, let's go and check. Where is this going? Like when I hit login, what route am I going to? Nope. It's not a session. It's a post to users. Okay, so this is a frequent sticking point, so I want to take a moment to mention it thoroughly. Sessions and users are two different resources, right? Like they're in two different controllers, they have two different view folders, they're two different RESTful resources. It can be very confusing because like they're very intermingled, right? Like a session like has a lot to do with a user, and a user has a session, right? But they're definitively separate things. So when we're registering a new user for the site, like we are creating a new user. So that's a post to users, straight up. Cool? Okay. So in our post to users, what do we got? We've got a user new. This is from our like pattern that we were following earlier, right? we've got a user at user variable which equals a user new, which consumes param user. We don't have that here, so that's not going to work out for us. Maybe. What do we get from the form? We get email, username, password, and password confirmation. But none of these are, they're not nested, right? Which I think is what our like template was looking for, was nested params from the controller, or from the view rather. So this would be like user email, user username, and user password. This one down here we're going to leave out. We're not going to nest this within user. Can anyone tell me why?
We're just comparing that value to the other one.
Sure, we will be doing that. You're not. That's sort of the root there, is that it doesn't go to the database. There is no column on the users table entitled password confirmation. They just have the password hash. And if we attempted to create a new user passing it params user, and like that included the nested attribute password confirmation, it would be an active record error, because active record would come back and say to you, no such attribute password confirmation. Make sense? Great. We can lose this line because we no longer need to run the password thing, because like it's now being taken care of up here in this key value store. So that just goes away. And then it's if the user saves, and we redirect. I don't even want to redirect to users. I want to, if I make a new user, I probably want to take them directly to their home page. So I'm going to say redirect to like /users/ @user.id. Otherwise, re-render the page with these errors, re-rendering the new make a new user page.
Why do you not need the password there?
Why do I not need the password on 16? Because now that we're passing nested attributes, right? User password is one of those attributes, which means that essentially what's happening here is something along these lines, right? Where it's like username, because it sees that as a key, and then that corresponds with params. You already got it. Okay, great. Okay, sweet. We included a password confirmation, but we haven't run a check for it yet. So let's do that. If params password confirmation double equals params user password, then do all this stuff.
Password underscore.
Okay, thanks. Int else maybe at errors equals array passwords do not match, and then re-erb this thing again. So you see how like we just added the conditional there? All good? Okay, great. Let's go ahead and hit this button. Actually, before we hit the button, one last thing. Let's p. There we go. Now let's hit the button. Oh my god. No method error. Undefined method square brackets for nil class in a post to users. Okay. What was it that was nil? Let's take a look here. Line 18. Boom, this one. Undefined method square brackets for no class. So params, well actually, we can take a look at this thing. What do we get? Email.
Oh, it is a
Oh, it is a hyphen, yes. So we'll make it an underscore. But also, like, there's a problem here in that you see the params aren't nested. It's because I didn't refresh the page. All right. I need to refresh the page to like consume the new form that we made. But yes, also let's change that to an underscore because that does seem better. Refresh the page again. Tom at tom.com. Tom. Hit it. No such file or directory, users show. Well, that's an expected error because we haven't written this view yet. But like that's actually good news for us because like the fact that it's trying to send us over to user show means that we logged in. Like we now have a valid user and the user was logged in. Let's take a look at the terminal. Above our error message, we've got our params here. You see now the params are nested. User correlates with this hash, right? Email is an attribute, username is an attribute, password is an attribute, right? Which lets us just pass that user.new params user. It's much cleaner. Everybody clear on that? And then like so let's wrap this up really quickly here. Let's go out to views and let's just have the user show. And in H1 here, users show. And then to display the information here, I'm going to write my first helper method. I'm going to come over to helpers. I'm going to make a new file in helpers called session underscore helpers helper.rb. File name really doesn't matter. In here, I'm going to say helpers do end and start defining a method. Def current underscore user. Current user holds a very special place in my heart because it was like the first time in my life that anyone like came up and like showed me a bit of code, and I was like, that's fucking awesome. I'm gonna use that a lot. So as it turns out, you will use that a lot. So session ID. So let's talk about what's happening here. We got a method current user. It comes in here. You've got an instance variable at current user, and if at current user exists, it just returns that instance variable straight out, and that's it. End of method. If this variable does not exist, which is to say or, right, then set that variable equal to the following. The following being database lookup user.find based on their ID, an integer which is equivalent to session ID, right? Because our session ID is our user's ID, so those integers should match. Yeah. And then just some like basic error checking here on the end if session ID, right? So if no session ID, then the entire thing doesn't run. Yeah. This process up front here with the or equals is known as memoization, right? You're making it so that you're not hitting the data. Like if we didn't have that, then every time we call current user, we're making a new database lookup. This way, we're like storing that value, and if it's there, then we just return the value straight up. No need to go off the database and check. So that means over here in the show now, I can do something like PE current user dot username, right? And like maybe I put that in an H2. And when we refresh this page, identify method username for nil class. Really? Oh, yeah, okay, I guess I screwed that up. We need to do one more thing. In the error was undefined method username for nil class. So here in the users controller, under the post to users, the problem out in the show is that like maybe this should be wrapped in like an if, like if current user. Run this to like ensure that someone is logged in before we like try to do things with them, and that will like fix the error. But in addition to that, like it would probably also be nice. Like I just signed someone up for the website. It'd probably be nice if I went ahead and logged them in, right? How do I do that? Anybody?
Session.
The process, like the thing which determines whether a user is logged in or not, is the existence of this session ID token or key, right? So just setting it right here, and now there will be Tom, and like, so now I'm logging them in right as I'm registering them for the site. Toggle off the debugging here, and maybe the show becomes like a welcome this thing. Yeah, there we go. The very last thing would be like some ability to log out. Maybe we go back to the index, and we just have a form here, which goes to its action, goes to /sessions. Its method will be a post, but within it we'll have an input which type will equal hidden, name will equal underscore method, value will equal delete, and this input now will be type submit with a value of logout. So this should take us on a delete route to /sessions. Go and look at the sessions controller. We haven't written this at all yet. We can do it very easily. We're just taking the act of logging the user in with setting the user ID to session ID. The act of logging the user out is setting the session ID to nil. Easy peasy. And then redirect, back to root or wherever it is you want to go after you log them out. Let's see if that works. We have a welcome TomTom under users 2. If we, oh no, that's not what I wanted at all. If we go back to the home page, which is where our button lives, and we hit log out, and then we go back to users/2 again, now it no longer displays the user because there's no longer a user logged in. You would probably want some logic in, you'd probably want to put all these things that we have, all these things here. Well, we no longer need the secret thing, right? We no longer need that, right? But like these things, probably maybe in a header, right? So you might have like an if current user, do some stuff, else do some other stuff. So what? If current user, then it would just be like the form to log out and maybe an anchor link to /users/ oh, that didn't work out. Current user.id. And this one would be like profile. So there's a link to their profile page and a link to log out. Else, which is to say there's no current users, no one logged in on the site, log in or register with proper indentation for all this stuff. And then, like, I don't only want to see this on the index page. I want to see it on the entire site. So I'm going to pull it off the index page, and like if I wanted something to be seen on the entire site, what could I do? Layout, yeah. So I could come and like paste it in right here. But I don't personally care for that. Instead, I'm going to come right in here. I'm going to say header. And within here, I'm going to PE, and I'll ERB out to header. Or underscore header, because it's going to be a partial. So we'll write our first partial under views, and no folder for the view for this view because it's not like part of a resource, so it's just going to go out in the global. Underscore header.erb. I'll paste this in there. So ERB header, let's see if that works. It totally worked. Log in or register because no one's logged in. If I log in, I should be able to say Tom. What was this? Email, right? tom@tom.com. Password TomTom. Oh no, login doesn't work. Post to sessions. I don't see the error message yet. Oh, status must be seen as greater than 100. So let's go to the place where this occurred in the session controller. It is because right here we're not doing anything. We're not going anywhere. So the browser, whatever is returned from each of these methods, right, is what the browser is going to yield. When that return value is an integer, the browser interprets that as being a status code, not like actual content. So in this case, the thing which is being returned is the user ID, which is probably like 2. And the browser is saying, hey, I don't know about a status code of 2. That doesn't work. Really, we need to redirect here because like we're coming out of post route. And post routes typically redirect. After we post in, we'll go out, or we'll just go back to the home page. Right? So if we try this again, tom@tom.com, TomTom, and now we go to the home page, and our header like changes to indicate like that we now have a user actually logged into the site. Okay, questions? Oh my God, this took longer than I thought. I'm sorry.
That underscore that you use, what was that?
Okay, when you make a partial, the convention for naming a partial is that it begins with a leading underscore.
What is a partial?
A partial is some view file that you will use within some other view file, and that's it. You're gonna hear like that term banted about, and like some people will, it might like strike you as like, whoa, partial. I gotta, it's like some super special thing. It's not. It's just another ERB file that happens to be rendered within another ERB file. So it's a partial view. So in this case, this header partial is something that we're consuming within like our layout site-wide. It's dumb.
How do you keep user passwords secure or not know about them?
Okay, let's actually go and take a look at that. So we all know that my user password is TomTom, right? If I say burate console and bigin, I was way ahead of you. And I go u equals user.last, right? So that's user ID 2, TomTom, email TomTom, password hash. Whoa, that's not TomTom. What is it?
Password.
It's a password hash. So what happened, the entire point of bcrypt under the hood is this. And we can say u.password underscore hash. The entire point of bcrypt under the hood is this, this password hashing, right? It's taking some string and it's running it through an algorithm that breaks it up and encrypts it and re-breaks it up and encrypts it, re-breaks it up and encrypts it so many times until like it comes out with this sort of gibberish thing here, right? Which no one, you cannot go from this password hash back to my plain text password of TomTom. It's not possible, right? But you can go from TomTom, like because the algorithm is the way it is. Like if I put TomTom in and I tell bcrypt to hash that string, it will 100 times out of 100 arrive at this hash, right? So the thing that we're actually storing in the database is the hash, right? The user enters in their password in plain text. The process, if we go and take a look at like the sessions controller, the process of logging in is to say, take the user's current password, which under the hood, bcrypt is looking up the password hash here, and see if it equals this new like password that was just passed in. What bcrypt is doing under the hood is it is hashing this password, and it's looking at your current password hash. And do those two hashes match? Yes? Sweet. That returns true. Do the two hashes not match? Nay. Returns false. Yes, Tom?
Does that mean that there's like one person in the universe who wrote the bcrypt algorithm who could know all the passwords that is ever used?
No, absolutely not.
Isn't there like one master of the universe involved in this?
I don't think so.
Because the algorithm.
The algorithm's one way.
Yeah, the algorithm is one way. There's no way to go from a hash to a string. Doesn't work.
The only way that you could get them is if you had a database and you were storing all possibles for everything. But the way that bcrypt gets around that is by adding what they call salt.
Boom. Next point on my list. Let's talk about
Thousands of
salts.
databases.
Yeah, you would need, I mean, like, there's just not enough, no one has enough space.
Oh,
All right, there's so much. So Nellis Provost and David Mezieres, okay, came up with the whole bcrypt hashing algorithm. Takes these like chunks of data down into unique gibberish. We're all fans of unique gibberish. And then down below it talks about like salts. It's saying that like yes, there is sort of an upper limit to the amount of combinations that you can have with just like a standard hashing algorithm. To make the entirety of bcrypt more secure, you can add a salt, which is essentially an additional randomized chunk of data to the end of your randomized chunk of data, thus making it like a much more randomized chunk of data, right? But at the end of the day, right, like it's taking whatever this hash and like comparing it to some other thing that it hashed. So it's like applying an algorithm until it gets down to its like whatever its case is, takes the ultimate output of that, takes the ultimate output which was stored in your database. Do these things match? Yes. This is how bcrypting and password hashing works. Questions?
But if you lost your database, you kind of have, right?
Yeah, sure. If you lost your database, then all of your users have to like come with. Well, I mean, you don't have users to begin with, so really, no. Let's say that if you lost your database, users' passwords aren't your foremost issue. Okay. So let's recap quickly before we go. Just like super quick about what we covered. Migrations and models, easy peasy, right? We talked about 3 RESTful routes for sessions. We talked about we just like applied a pattern here. I didn't really talk about the user's controller at all because that wasn't the purpose of this talk. Really, the only thing we did in the user's controller today was like making this user's post work. In fact, like if we weren't applying this pattern and you were writing it from scratch, like all of you will be, probably the only routes you would need is the new, right, to get the form to make a new user, the post to create a new user, and then the show for showing like the user profile once they've been logged in. Which is not to say that you don't need the other user routes, but like we just would not have covered them in this tutorial. They exist here only merely because I applied like a specific pattern. Within the post, right, checking a password confirmation, returning if things don't work out, creating a new user if the user saves, logging them in with this line of code, redirecting them to their home page, else making a variable and sending it back out to the login page again. Under the sessions controller, right, getting the new page, finding a user based on their email, checking the validity of the password that is stored in the database versus the validity of the password, or the validity of the password stored in the database versus the password that they entered. If those work out, same line of code here, creating a session, logging them in, redirecting them back to the root page. We talked about creating your first partial, which we put on the home page, underscore header. We talked about, we made within the header file, right, like we have the form, which is going to a delete route. This should be like quickly becoming second nature, this ability to like hit non-get and post routes with this line here. And then like we just had some forms. Like the basic forms, I won't talk about those. But definitively I will talk about like we made this current user helper. This really is jazzy. I just showed it off a little bit right here with this username. But like maybe if we, we could have like a ton of data here, right? Like be like age and, oh God. Like say you're on like a user's profile page, like imagine how many different times you need to access information about that user, right? Like you've got this many puppies and you made this many orders last week and this is the like contents of your shopping cart currently, and like all these different attributes that may have like come from like your giant user object. You can access all of them with just the one database lookup now via the current user method. So that's why that's very jazzy. Also, like it works very well for determining the state of the session, like if current user, if someone is logged in. I also see Boots on a fairly regular basis like alias this out to make it more readable, and they'll say like if logged in, right, where they make another helper here, which is like def logged in, which just returns current user. Yeah. So because like the current user lookup, if it's false, it will return false. Or if this doesn't work out, it will return nil, which is falsy. If it does work out, it returns back an object, which is truthy. So thus like resulting in the ultimate like Boolean state of this as a method, which is more human readable if logged in. Yeah.
You don't need at on that one?
So great question. I would really prefer it if you did not ever call current user with the @ symbol, as you're setting up like a terrible dependency in your code. Let's go back to the show up here. Let's say like I could totally here, I could say @currentUser.username and consume this instance variable, which is now available out here in the code. It's available in the code because I previously called the method and brought it into this scope. But what if I hadn't previously called the method? And you know what I mean? Like now I've got an undefined, like now @currentUser is nil. The moral of the story here is if you have a method which brings back a lookup, like I would prefer that you use the method for the lookup rather than the direct variable lookup, because like this ensures that like the process of making that variable legitimate is abided by each and every time, as opposed to just like trusting and hoping and crossing your fingers. They're like, I'm pretty sure that variable exists. Maybe we'll find
Say
out.
that all one more time. But why not use the instance variable? Why that creates a dependency?
Yeah, it creates a dependency because like maybe the variable exists, maybe it doesn't. Right? Like if I didn't have this line of code up here, it's easy to think, well, I would just see that I hadn't called the method yet in this, right? But it's not easy to see if this were, something like some file like this, right? Where oh my God, did I call the method? Did I not?
So if you had no line 4 and no @,
The moral of the story is that like you just don't have to worry about it if you're calling the method directly as opposed to the like this instance variable, right? Then like it's handing that back to you,
it's always going to be there.
and it's always going to it's a very dependable resolution of like your inquiry, right? And like you know that it's going to return either the user object or nil 10 times out of 10. Okay. Other questions? We went really long here.
Worth it.
So we're going to do no afternoon breakout today. You have EE at 4:30. So just get in and crank out the code and hustle. Myself, Todd, and Lou will be on the floor, and Max. Sorry, Max. Didn't mean to offend you, buddy. Max, you count. You're totally legitimate. All right. Thanks everybody for hanging out. Yeah, have fun.
Thank you.